Thanks, Rob. I've known Rob for a long time, and he's a great guy. And he's going to be the best U.S. Senator in the U.S. Senate that we've ever seen. He knows how to cut the budget, he knows how to balance the budget, and he's got common sense, and he knows how to make things work. And really appreciate you being here today, Rob. And then my good friend John Husted, Dave Yost, they're gonna win Ohio back, and we're gonna get John Kasich next governor, right? And your own, in Muskegon County, Troy Balderson, doing a great job in the State House. I can't forget about my other good friend Jimmy Stewart, the state senator for this area. He came in 33. Jimmy's doing a great job, and they got a lot of work to do in Columbus next January, but they're going to get it done under the leadership of John Kasich. Now, I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I've been looking at some of these numbers. When Zach Space took his seat in Congress in January 2007 and Nancy Pelosi became Speaker, the national debt was $8 trillion. Today they tell me the national debt's $13.5 trillion. Does that sound like a big problem, doesn't it? And it's amazes me. Now, I don't know, I'll get corrected on this, but I think back in August, Nancy Pelosi called everybody back into Congress to come back that one day on a Tuesday to spend $26 billion that they don't have. And on Monday that week, Zach Space put out a press release, which usually is at least one press release a day, blasting me and saying that I should support that $26 billion expenditure because it's deficit neutral. And here's how it's deficit neutral under his rationale. $10 billion of the $26 billion, they're going to raise taxes on American businesses that happen to do business overseas. Guess what? That's a lot of businesses here in the 18th. That's going to encourage them to either leave or kill more jobs. But the real one I really think is really unbelievable. $16 billion of that $26 billion, he said, it's deficit neutral because they're going to spend less money. They're not going to spend as much on food stamps. But the catch was, not until 4 years. And I thought, well, wait a second. That means if somebody wants to go out and buy a boat or whatever, and they don't have the money, so they convince somebody to borrow, to loan them the money, but they justify in their mind it's all right to do that expenditure because in 4 years they're going to spend less money. That's how they're going to balance the budget? Are you kidding me? This is insanity. So we can't have people in Congress that think that way. We got to have people in Congress to understand how the economy works, how businesses work, and how we create jobs. And the government does not create jobs. The private sector does, right? Now, here's another number that kind of blows me away. Remember back in February of 2009, they said, hey, we got to pass this stimulus, unemployment can't go above 8%. Well, here's the results. I think it's about 3.5 million people now in the private sector have lost their jobs, and have added over $3 trillion in debt. That's really working well. Now they come out and say, well, they didn't spend enough. Nearly $1 trillion, not enough. This is insanity. We're going to give these people their pink slips come Tuesday, right? Little story, but here's how I kind of look at things. Since I've written on both sides of the paycheck and I've hired people and I kind of know how things work that way. But, we have to create prosperity in this country. Because when you create prosperity, you create jobs and opportunities, okay? And, all the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. right now are putting big hurdles or blockades against the entrepreneurs or the employers or innovators to go out and create prosperity. And you don't pass things like a national energy tax, cap and trade. You don't pass Obamacare. You don't have all this uncertainty. You don't have a deficit that's in the trillions of dollars and add to the debt. That's uncertainty. So the employers and all our entrepreneurs are kind of sitting on their hands because they're scared to death to risk capital. And they got to get the right signals from Washington. The way we get the right signals from Washington is we cut that federal deficit. We got to get spending under control. That's number one. Number two, we got to roll back these massive tax increases. And number three, we need regulatory reform and have common sense regulations that make economic sense. We do those three things, we bring confidence back in the economy. And the good thing I find out when I meet out with employers every day is there's a lot of pent-up demand out there. And they're ready to invest in their businesses and start hiring people back and creating jobs. But they got to have confidence that we're moving forward on some stable economic ground. I want to go back to the prosperity thing just for a second. There's really three ways you create prosperity. One is we develop our natural resources. You drill for it or you mine it. We can do that responsibly, and that'll help us with some other issues, right? Number two, you raise or grow it, agriculture. Number three, you make it manufacturing. Those, when you do those types of things, you create wealth and prosperity and jobs and opportunities. But like I said, this Congress and this administration is putting blockades against those people, the risk takers in this nation, that create the jobs because they're raising more government regulations, burdensome regulations, higher taxes, higher costs, and they're not going to invest. And that's what we got to turn this country around, and that's why this election nationally is so important. Because if we don't change this, just like Rob Portman said, we're going down the tubes. And this deficit spending, it's also a national security issue. We're borrowing money from China. I think that's pretty explanatory, not really a good thing. But then that means there's more money with all this huge deficit spending and debt. The money that does come into the federal government, more of it has to go to service the debt, interest. That's less money for national defense. Important things like the federal government should be doing. Now think about this. How did the Cold War end? How did the Soviet Union fall apart? There wasn't a shot fired. We bankrupted them. We're bankrupting ourselves. That's why we got to turn this around, because this is a national security issue. We just pass along to our kids a mortgage. It's unsustainable. We risk on passing on a country that's no longer free, but bigger and bigger government, and that erodes our God-given constitutional freedoms. So I'm committed. We're going to turn this around, get the economy going, get people back to work by getting spending under control, cutting taxes, and regulatory reform.